Okay, so here we're looking at risk. There are two types. Um, so the word risk often has negative connotations. While we don't talk about the risk of running a raffle or a lotto or anything good happening, we might talk about the risk of getting cancer or disease or something like that, something bad happening. There are two types of risk. We've got absolute risk and we've got relative risk. So the absolute risk is just the chance of or probability of something happening. As mentioned before, it usually has negative connotations. For example, the absolute risk of getting a particular disease in your lifetime could be 2.4%. Absolute risk can be written as a decimal, a fraction, or a percentage. Relative risk. Relative risk compares two probabilities in two different groups, so it's a comparison really. For example, whether a drug has an effect of being cured of a disease, or another example is whether smoking increases the chance of getting lung cancer. Relative risk can be more than one, which is completely against everything that we've done in probability so far. The relative risk is the risk of one event divided by the risk of another event, and we'll look at that. So this is our relative risk, that's our formula. So it's the risk or probability of one event divided by the probability of another event. If the relative risk is greater than 1, the risk for the first event is greater. So that means this top line here is greater than the bottom line. Okay? If it equals 1, then the risk for both events is exactly the same, because you're dividing one number by itself, which equals 1. If it is less than 1, the risk for the second event is greater. So that means this event on the top is smaller than this event on the bottom. Okay, we're going to look at this example here. And this is the Walker example on page 66, if you want to follow through with it. So you've got a trial done on 1,000 sheep to determine the effectiveness of a vaccine to protect the sheep against a disease. Vaccine was given to 600 sheep and none was given to the other 400 sheep. The number of sheep that got the disease was recorded, whether they were vaccinated or not. So this says that there were 39 that were vaccinated that got the disease, and this was 87 that weren't vaccinated got the disease. So the absolute risk that a sheep got the disease, so if we're looking at got the disease, okay, so the total that got the disease was 126, and so those that got the disease was 126, and we're looking at all sheep, so it said a sheep, so we're looking at it out of 1,000. So it will be 126 over 1,000, so 0.126. So this is the absolute risk that an unvaccinated sheep got the disease. So we've been given like a condition. So we're only looking at unvaccinated sheep. Okay, so unvaccinated sheep is the 400. Okay, how many out of those 400 got the disease? It is 87. So it's the number of unvaccinated sheep that have the disease divided by the total number of unvaccinated sheep is 87 out of 400, and that's 0.2175. Next part, calculate the absolute risk that a vaccinated sheep got the disease. So here we're only looking at vaccinated sheep this time. Okay, so we're just looking at the vaccinated sheep, this row here. Okay, so we want to know how many got the disease. So we know that 39 out of the 600 got the disease. So our 39 out of the 600, and that is a probability of 0.065. So this is the actual finding, the relative risk now. So we're going to compare vaccinated with unvaccinated sheep. So we're comparing this row here with this row here. That's what we're comparing. Okay, so we want the relative risk that it gets the disease. So we've worked out these probabilities before in the previous two in B and C. Um, but if we need to know the unvaccinated was 87 out of 400 and vaccinated was 39 out of 600. In fact, you can see that's a lot more that were unvaccinated that got the disease. So the relative risk is probability of getting the disease of unvaccinated compared to the probability of getting the disease if you are vaccinated. So okay. So we worked out those probabilities before. So the top line here, that 0.2175 is 87 out of 400. Okay, and the 0.065 is the 39 out of 400, and that's the 39 out of 600. Okay, that's where those two come from. And that's 3.346. Page. Okay, explain your result with that. So we've got our relative risk as being 3.346. That means an unvaccinated sheep, because that was on the top line, is more than 3 times more likely to get the disease than a vaccinated sheep. So anything, this is the number that you use here. So an unvaccinated sheep is more than 3 times more likely to get the disease than a vaccinated sheep.